Thursday. Lingering fog into, well, possibly the early afternoon across parts of England and Wales will keep things quite chilly where that happens. Otherwise, sunny spells once again for much of central and southern UK. Cloudier further north, and we keep that weather into Friday and the weekend. There'll be increased fog across southern parts of the country later.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into the things that have got you talking today. And another day and another attempt to bring Boris Johnson down this time. Another so-called party during lockdown. I've lost count of the number I'm on now. What is it, 10 or so? I don't know. Anyway, according to an email leak 20 months ago, the powers that be were enjoying the sunshine at a bring-your-own-booze garden party at the same time as they were telling us that we couldn't socialise with others. Who is doing this political point scoring? Why wait 20 months to expose it? And why was the date removed from the leaked email? Oh, I have lots of questions, but my main one is, how important is the latest Partygate to you? And GB News has launched a campaign to scrap the Vats to help reduce energy bills among the so-called cost of living crisis. I think the government shouldn't just stop there, though. It's surely time to look at things like green levies. And while I'm on a roll, why not reevaluate whether or not we should reconsider fracking as well? What do you reckon? And can you remember your careers advice at school? Was it any good? Did you follow their advice, or did you do the complete opposite? I ask because Esther McVeigh has been speaking again in the Commons about the importance of career advice. But is the concept a bit outdated, or is it more needed now than ever? We'll have all of that to come and more, but first, the news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. A Conservative minister has told Parliament Boris Johnson is going nowhere after allegations he attended drinks in the Downing Street Gardens during lockdown in May 2020. It follows claims more than 100 people were invited to the alleged bring-your-own-booze party. Boris Johnson's principal private secretary, Martin Reynolds, who sent the invite, is said to retain the full confidence of the Prime Minister. Mr Johnson has refused to say whether he attended. In the Commons, Paymaster General Michael Ellis was asked if the Prime Minister will resign.
Prime Minister's going nowhere. He seeks to draw me into making a supposition about the result of any inquiry. but the Prime Minister retains the confidence of the people of this country, and he did so 2 years ago with the biggest majority in decades.
Well, two polls from YouGov and Savanta Comres have found that over half of UK adults think the Prime Minister should now resign. This comes as latest police data shows hundreds of fines for breaking COVID laws in England and Wales were handed out in the week of the alleged garden party. Scotland Yard has said it's in contact with the Cabinet Office about the allegations at Number 10. Meanwhile, Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner accused Boris Johnson of hiding behind the civil service investigation into the Downing Street parties.
It's incredibly disappointing, but not unsurprising, that the Prime Minister, of whom I asked this question, is not here today, despite not having any official engagements. And I think, Mr. Speaker, his absence speaks volumes, as does his smirks on the media. The public have already drawn their own conclusions. He can run, but he can't hide.
In other news, Nicola Sturgeon has announced current COVID restrictions in Scotland will be lifted in a phased way from next week. The crowd limit of 500 people at large-scale outdoor events will be removed on Monday, but limits on numbers at indoor events, table service in restaurants and social distancing in public places will remain until at least the 24th of January.
A combination of the protective measures introduced before Christmas, the responsible action on the part of the general public and the rapid delivery of booster vaccines have had a positive impact. As a result, I will indicate that from next week we will begin to lift the measures introduced before Christmas, but that we will do so in a phased and careful way.
Meanwhile, asymptomatic people who test positive for COVID-19 on a lateral flow test in England no longer need a follow-up PCR test. But they will still be required to self-isolate immediately. The aim is to free up testing capacity for those with symptoms. Well, Novak Djokovic's hopes to win his 21st Grand Slam title remain in doubt after claims he might have given misleading information on arrival into the country. Australian media is reporting that officials are concerned about claims on his entry form that he hadn't travelled in the days prior to his landing. But social media posts appear to show the world #1 attending events abroad during the period in question. Australian immigration is still considering whether to cancel Djokovic's visa. There's still some way to go before pig organs are routinely used in human transplants, NHS officials have said. Medics in the US made history last week when they transplanted a genetically engineered pig heart into a human patient for the first time. 3 days after the procedure, doctors at the University of Maryland Medical Center in Baltimore say 57-year-old David Bennett is doing well. Medical experts confirmed it saved his life. It's estimated over 100,000 Americans are waiting for an organ transplant. And Vicar of Dibley star Gary Waldhorn has died at the age of 78. The TV star was best known for playing counsellor David Horton alongside Dawn French in the comedy sitcom. Featuring in every episode since it first aired in 1994, his family have said he passed away peacefully yesterday morning. Well, this is GB News. More news as it happens. Now let's get back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks to that. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock is my panel, Harriet Sargent, who's a journalist and author, and anthropologist Mary Ann O'Hotter and author James Hartfield. Good evening to all of you. Some new faces for us tonight as well. What a treat. And you know the drill as well about Dewbs & Co. It's not just about us and our thoughts, it's about you and yours. You can get in touch with me on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GB News. You've already started getting in contact with me. Quite a mixed bag coming in so far when it comes to the party, the latest Partygate, which we'll come on to in a second, but you've already started getting in contact with me about that. Janice says, I couldn't give a monkeys about their parties, Michelle, but then I cast my mind back to our lovely Queen sitting alone at her husband's funeral. She goes on to say, no more voting Tory for me. I have to say that's a sense that's coming in thick and fast already tonight. But other people are saying, Alan has got in contact saying, we're sick of talking about these parties. You should all talk about something else or we're going to switch off. That's from Alan. So there you go. Sorry, Alan, but I am actually just about to talk about it. Do stay with us, though, because we have got other stuff coming in as well. But as we were mentioning, it's another day, another party, allegedly. And this time, about 100 people were invited to a Bring Your Own Booze event in the Downing Street Garden in the first lockdown in May last year. An email that was revealed and later broadcast by GBNews showed that one of Boris Johnson's aides, Martin Reynolds, has invited number 10 staff to the lockdown party, which the Prime Minister and wife Carrie are believed to have attended. The police are now investigating. I do have to say what strikes me as very peculiar. I did flash up the email there, the one that's kind of central to all of this focus today. Of course, the name of the sender, etc., is removed from that email. But I also can't help but find it very peculiar that the date was removed as well. Isn't that quite crucial information? Nonetheless, though, earlier today in the Commons, Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner criticised the Prime Minister for not being in the Commons today.
It's incredibly disappointing, but not unsurprising, that the Prime Minister, of whom I asked this question, is not here today, despite not having any official engagements. And I think, Mr. Speaker, his absence speaks volumes, as does his smirks on the media. The public have already drawn their own conclusions. He can run, but he can't hide.
Now, this all centres around May the 20th, apparently last year, when this party, it's not last year actually, it's 2020. Goodness me, I forget we're in 2022 already. So yeah, May the 20th, 2020 was when this was all supposed to have been taken place. Do you know what you was doing at that point in time? I certainly do, because I looked at my camera roll. I was watching people having a party on a waterfront outside. During that time, though, there were strict COVID restrictions, including things like do not leave your house without good reason, no gatherings of 2 or more people unless for work purposes. Now, the stories of these parties during lockdown and Boris Johnson's attendance, as I said, are being investigated, not only by the police, but by top civil servant Sue Gray. Live now, shall we head to Downing Street, where our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, joins us. Darren, good evening. Tell us the latest.
Hello, Michelle. Well, I think the latest is essentially the Prime Minister's hunkered down in the bunker at number 10. We haven't seen him all day today. As you say, Labour managed to get that urgent question in Parliament. Boris Johnson did not turn up, sending Michael Ellis, a junior minister, instead. And yet these questions do persist about what may have gone on in that Downing Street garden in May 2020 in regards to whether it happened or not. I mean, what is most interesting today is that when the Prime Minister's spokesperson was asked repeated questions from journalists about whether the party happened, about whether the Prime Minister was there or not, there was no comment, no denial that it had happened. And I think that is the strongest sign that the Prime Minister almost certainly was in attendance. We know many people who were at that party, upwards of 30, said he and his wife, Carrie Symonds, were there. And I think that's why, Michelle, to a large degree, it is pretty damaging for Boris Johnson, because even though there have been upwards of reports of 12 different parties in different government departments in 2020, this is the first one where essentially it seems the Prime Minister was there himself. And that is why MPs, even some Conservatives, are asking, why does the Prime Minister need an official investigation into an event that he was at? Surely he knows whether he was there or not. And also I get the sense of a mood amongst the Conservative Party and its MPs, backbenchers talking to them today, that they're just pretty fed up, exhausted with these kind of drip stories of these parties that are doing damage not just to Boris Johnson but to the government's reputation. It clearly have caused an awful lot of distress amongst people who did make an awful lot of sacrifices during that first lockdown, who couldn't go to hospital to see loved ones die, who couldn't visit elderly care homes. And there is that sense, I think, that they really want the Prime Minister to draw a line under this, to come clean, to explain what happened, maybe to apologise. He will be given that chance, of course, at Prime Minister's Question Time tomorrow, which promises to be an absolutely fascinating one certainly not to be missed. The government, though, insistent again tonight that they're going to have to wait for this official investigation to come forward, to be completed. They are not offering any comment until that happens. Is that line really going to hold? I suspect not, hence why, as I say, PMQs tomorrow in the Commons will certainly be a spicy one, I might suggest, Michelle.
Indeed. My popcorn will be at the ready for that. Darren McCaffrey, thanks very much for your insight. Now, let me bring this back towards the panel. Harriet Sargent, what is your thoughts on this whole kind of Partygate? Does this matter to you?
Well, it matters because we were all making sacrifices and suddenly we discover that everyone is having fun except us. I do think that, though, a lot of these parties were actually colleagues, and I think technically, you can, as colleagues, were allowed to get together. I mean, I don't think they were bringing in partners or, anyone outside their particular office. That's the impression I get. But it's still very upsetting. I mean, people are right to be angry. The thing I find, and the thing that makes me sad is that actually I was right behind Boris. I think the vaccine rollout has been hugely successful. I've experienced this myself. I've just had COVID. My aged parents, who are in their late 90s, have a huge number of health problems, have just had COVID. Thanks to Boris, we were all had nothing more than a sniffle. So I'm very grateful to Boris, and I find this, deeply distressing that all that good work has just been tarnished by the government's craziness for parties.
Marianne?
It's not just government lack of sense, it's his personal idiocy and complacency and the fact that, this is a line that, Michelle, we've used time and time again over the past few weeks. One rule for them, one rule for us. And my concern is that this drip of corruption and sleaze and Partygate after Partygate, this time it's sausage rolls in his own garden. He knows whether he was there or not. He doesn't need a civil servant to tell him, let's be honest. The bottom line is that the risk is we all start to gloss over and glaze over and say, like some of the viewers have tweeted in, oh, I'm tired of this, let's just move on. And the risk is that just chips away at the integrity of what we expect from our political leaders, what we expect from our politicians. And fundamentally, that has a much greater legacy of damage than any specific he said, she said about who brought the sausage rolls and whether Carrie was there or whether she wasn't.
James, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's the line, he's not going anywhere, seemed to have a double meaning to me because we look at him and we think he's really not going anywhere. The sense of purpose behind this government, that they really did tackle the COVID pandemic and ask a lot of us. And it's true. I've been working as a vaccinator and it's been very exciting and really enjoyable work. And I think it's done a great thing for the country. But a lot of people made so many sacrifices that now they really feel like they're mugs, that they've been made fun of, that somehow this was one rule for the people in charge, that they don't wear masks, that when they're photographed at the international events, they wear their masks and then they take them off when the photographer goes. And they're served by people wearing masks, but they're not wearing masks. And it does feel like we're being made fun of. And I think that's probably the thing that hurts him most.
Yeah, and obviously there is an investigation ongoing, so of course we do need to wait for the outcome of that. But I've got to play, I want to just play devil's advocate a little bit here, Marianne, because I just flashed up on the screen earlier on the email that's been published by, apparently leaked to ITV News and has been published by them. I find it incredibly peculiar because there's no date on this email. Now, the date is indeed the pivotal point of this whole story. This is what the whole story essentially pins on. It's linking it back to a time when the country had, great restrictions on them and people were visiting people through windows and not going to funerals and all the rest of it. There's the email now. I mean, it might be a little bit tricky for people to see, but the names have been redacted. Fair enough. I understand that people might want to protect their sources, but why has that date been taken off that email? Why is no one actually questioning that fact? And why is it taken as gospel that this is indeed on the 20th of May, 2020? I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying it isn't. What I'm saying is, if I was trying to do an expose to you, where the date was quite critical, I'd be damn sure that I left the date on it, because I would see that as quite a key point. Mary-Anne?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to be clear that we don't actually need to wait for the outcome of an investigation by a civil servant. It's not criminal proceedings at the moment. The Met Police have said that they are looking into these widely reported allegations, but it's not under criminal due process, so we can weigh in entirely and we can say Boris Johnson was at a party. I mean, we're not... we're not at
but you can't say that.
rules.
Well, you can say that you think that he was there, but you can't say it with any certainty, unless, of course, you was there as well. Then you can't say with any certainty that he was there, because the only people that know whether or not he was there is him and the other people in attendance. Harriet, one of the things that I find interesting about this is it seems to me like this is a real attempt to get Boris out.
Yeah.
You know, the timing of this. If somebody is so bothered, you know, if you've got any integrity about you, I would like to think anyway, if I was aware that the people that was making the rules, i.e. the rules being things like you cannot attend your loved one's dying deathbed, you cannot attend the funerals of people, you cannot go and see your loved ones in care homes. If I was aware at that point in time that the people making those rules were actually, you know, not only abiding by them, not only not abiding by them, but also doing whatever they want, I would have integrity about me and I would do something about that. I would raise that at that point in time. What I wouldn't do is hold on to it for 20 months and not have the kahunas to kind of put myself forward and be bold and say publicly and naming myself, this is what's going on and all the rest of it. So there's a little bit about this that sits uncomfortably with me.
Well, it makes me queasy because, I mean, what we've seen is a relentless manipulation of the sort of news agenda by Dominic Cummings. And, you know, through all the drip, drip, drip by Dominic Cummings. I personally don't like being manipulated. And
well, we don't know for certain who's leaking it, do we?
No, it was in his blog.
Right.
It was
so he's fessed up to it, to this particular email.
No, the email we don't know. No, I don't know. But he said about the party. He said about the party on the 20th of May.
Right.
So and he's been holding back all this stuff, and then it follows a pattern we've seen for months now, that just as poor Boris goes and hides, then he pokes his head out thinking that Dominic Cummings has vanished, and bang, Dominic Cummings hits him again. And I just feel a little bit queasy because, after all, for all Boris's many faults, he is an elected politician. He was voted by a large majority. Whereas Dominic Cummings, I don't think anyone's ever voted for him, ever.
Well, Dominic Cummings, is this the same Dominic Cummings who apparently goes on random driving trips to test his own eyesight when he's not supposed to be doing things like that? James, what's your view on kind of the things that I'm saying here? Do you have a sense that this is a real orchestrated takedown of Boris Johnson and is very deliberate?
I think there is that sense, but that's a clue in itself that when people start leaking against the government, it's a sign that they've lost their direction. And I feel that they did have a tremendous amount of direction around the pandemic and the management of the pandemic. And they also had a lot of sympathy from the public, and people put aside criticisms, and even the opposition were quiet when perhaps they ought to have been holding them to account. And it does feel like we've all of us stored up a lot of resentment, which is now bleeding out. So it may well be that on the detail it's not fair, but this is a clue that now this government has lost something like 10, 12 points in the polls. He used to have this very strong lead, now it's persistently behind. So it could just be symptomatic of the loss of direction.
Yeah, and Stephen's just emailed in as well saying, I've always been a full supporter of Boris Johnson right up until this latest party allegation. If the PM did attend this party, it is disgraceful, he goes on to say, because people were unable to visit their dying family members during that time in 2020. I mean, I've got to say, Mary-Anne, I look back at some of these rules that were in place and they were just callous. People forced to die on their own in hospitals with their loved ones on a Zoom, saying goodbye to them. People not being able to visit, extraordinarily loved people in care homes. These rules, I look back on them, and I think so many of them were pretty disgraceful, actually. Perhaps I digress, but nonetheless, because these rules were so life impacting, there is a lot of resentment and anger among people.
Absolutely, and rightly. Now, that's not necessarily because the rules were wrong. The outcome may well have been incredibly cruel and tragic in many circumstances, but this was a virus that we didn't know. That's the whole point. It was novel and it was incredibly dangerous. It has killed millions of people around the world and in this country. It has stolen the life chances and the life quality of all those people who are still suffering from long COVID. So some of those sacrifices that people were forced to make, some of the tragedies that they and families have had to endure may well have or were necessary to protect even more people, because otherwise the death toll would have been greater. Otherwise, the staff caring for those individuals in intensive care and critical care wouldn't have been able to do their jobs, and so more people would have died. So it's right that our sympathies are with those people who, for this, it just pours salt into wounds. And we need to not be complacent about this. We do need to hold our leaders to account. And Harriet, I'm really sorry, there is no poor Boris about this. It is, as Ruth Davidson has said today, indefensible. It is utterly indefensible.
Well, Charles has emailed in saying, my partner had cancer during this lockdown and she was deprived of seeing her grandchildren. I can still see the young grandkids standing in her driveway waving through the window whilst her life ebbed away. She eventually passed away, but she lost precious time with her family due to these lockdowns. If this is all true, then it is a betrayal to the people who follow the rules. That's what Charles says.
Yeah.
Rachel, however, says, come on, Michelle, a socially distanced work colleague gathering in a large garden is not in any way a kind of party. Bill says, well, hang on, because surely if 100 people have a party in your back garden, you would be aware of it. This is a pathetic excuse. And Elle says, democracy works by consent. Once you lose trust, you lose consent. Johnson should resign. Well, there you go. You've heard a mixed section of views there. Lots of you are emailing in. George says, everyone is equal, except some are more equal, it seems. Keep your views coming in. Going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be talking about the costs of living. Of course, we all know by now that it's going to increase. Energy bills, particularly. GB News has got a campaign to cut the VAT on energy bills. We'll have that and more after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs Anchor. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and just as a reminder as to who my panel are, because you may well be listening to us on the radio, in which case you can't see who is sitting next to me. We have Harriet Sargent to my right, who's a journalist and author, Mary Ann Erhotter, who's the anthropologist, and James Hartfield, who is an author. So good evening to all of you, and hello, not only to my viewers, but to my listeners. We love modern technology, and yes, what a treat. And also YouTube as well, we're also on there, so good evening to you if you're watching us on there as well. Now, let's talk, shall we, the cost of living. Boris Johnson and Chancellor Rishi Sunak are believed to be considering a U-turn over energy bills that would see VAT cut or scrapped to ease the pressure of these rising living costs. The Prime Minister had previously rejected the idea, saying slashing the tax was a blunt instrument. That is despite earlier promising that the VAT would be cut. I mean, after all, it was a perk of Brexit, wasn't it? Anyway, now he might be forced to U-turn and cut the VAT as he bows to political pressure. And Labour claims it would tax North Sea oil and gas companies to help reduce VAT on energy bills as well. Earlier in the House of Commons, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves accused the Chancellor of giving the public the highest tax burden in 70 years.
For 3 decades, the growing cost of living crisis is leaving families across our country worse off. People deserve security, prosperity and respect. But what does the Chancellor give them? The highest tax burden in 70 years and no action on rising costs. The Chancellor's national insurance rise is a tax on jobs. It's unfair and it is yet another broken promise.
Hashtag scrap the VAT. Well, here on GB News, we've started a campaign. Yes, you've guessed the name of it. Scrap the VAT. Let's turn to our economics and business editor and presenter of On the Money, Liam Halligan. Liam, good evening to you. You've been campaigning about the cost of VAT for a while now. Tell us more about this campaign.
Evening, Dewbs. Good to be on the show here on GB News this evening, as you say, on the television, on YouTube and on the radio as well. Well, every day on The Money at 1 p.m, Monday to Friday, we end up talking about the cost of living. It's what our viewers really care about. And so we started a campaign trying to pressure the government to scrap VAT on energy bills. Come April, Dewbs, there's going to be a triple whammy. There's going to be higher taxation, there's going to be higher inflation, and there's going to be much higher energy bills for households because that cap, the maximum price cap, it's set by Ofgem, the regulator. It's currently at £1,277, which is already sharply up, reflecting higher wholesale gas prices around the world. And in April, there's going to be a new cap, and all the signs are it's going to be even higher because wholesale gas prices have gone up even more. Could be £2,000 for the average household a year. So it goes up from about 100 quid a month for your utilities to £170. Now, a huge increase for ordinary men and women, for hard-working families. And that's why we're saying on The Money and indeed across GB News, and I'm grateful for your support, Dewbs, scrap the VAT for households on those energy bills. It will save people 100, 150 quid a year. It's not a huge amount, but it's a start, better than a kick in the teeth.
And how can viewers and listeners get behind this campaign, Liam?
Well, they can email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. We have had quite a few of the viewers actually appearing on my show, On The Money, at lunchtimes, talking about their energy crunches. If you like, they can lobby their MPs. They can write to their MPs by email or by post. And what I would say, Dewbs, is our campaign here on GB News is getting some traction. As you said earlier, the Labour Party is thinking of scrapping VAT on energy bills as part of a much broader package of measures, including a windfall tax on North Sea oil and gas companies and so on. And that was debated in the Commons today, putting pressure on the government. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson has previously said he wouldn't scrap VAT on fuel bills. And now they're briefing the press. It could happen.
Well, we shall be watching this space. Thank you very much, Liam Halligan, our business and economics editor. James, your thoughts on this?
Well, I'd scrap that, definitely, because it's a very regressive taxation. It puts the burden of tax paying upon the poorest as the same as on the richest. It's not really helping people. So I think that's a very good idea. The energy bills, I don't think is only about taxation. So scrapping some of the taxes, like the green taxes on energy bills, makes sense. But we have to think long term as well about energy production, and that's difficult because we wound down a lot of our energy production, either burning coal for electricity or fracking, but that was banned. We couldn't do fracking, whereas they do in America, and they've got much lower energy bills. And we're facing a crunch now where the countries with the gas and the oil really have us and can charge pretty much what they want because we're not generating enough energy for ourselves.
And Harriet, I mean, this whole, yes, the 5% VAT, that will really help some families. Also, I would like to go even further. And, we have a whole kind of obsession at the moment. And yes, I know people will get in touch with me and say it's the right obsession, but, it's debatable if you ask me. But nonetheless, we have a whole obsession about net zero at the moment. And when you look at the green levies and the percentage of the bills that they make up, it's quite high. Sometimes it can be around about 20% mark, there or thereabouts. So I would actually look at that, even if it was just a temporary pause to help people until things are settling down a little bit.
Well, I think that's a very good idea. But I think that, the government and the Labour Party are very hypocritical about this because then one moment we're being told we've all got to be green and that's the thing to do. And then the next moment we discover, it's rather expensive being green, and taxpayers say, no, and scream, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do this. So, I mean, everyone's now making a fuss about paying more for energy, but that means we use less energy, which we keep on being told by, extremist rebellion, is what we should be doing. So, everybody... This is what the world looks like.
Extinction Rebellion. Extremist Rebellion. I quite like that, though. I might campaign for a name change, but yeah, Extinction Rebellion, I think you mean.
Extinction Rebellion, yeah. So, everybody, this is the world that Extinction Rebellion wants, with high energy prices, so you don't use it.
Marianne?
OK, I think you're all, forgive me, living in absolute la-la land if you think we can kick the dealing with the energy crisis, the climate crisis, the nature crisis that we are living in and rolling headlong into. If we can just kick that down the road, we haven't got time. Net zero is enshrined in UK law that has to be achieved by 2050. And the green levies are enshrined in the contract, so they're legally binding. Now, there is a question of whether it's the consumer, the domestic user, hard-working families, who should be shouldering that burden, or whether it's those profit-making energy companies, the ones who are still plundering the North Sea for oil and gas. The thing we have to remember is that our country is a global leader in some renewable fuels. We have an absolute surplus of wind. We're an island. We are surrounded by waves. We have incredible engineers. We have incredible technicians. We've got some of the best offshore wind farm technology in the world.
And that's great when the wind blows.
We have to leverage that. Of offshore wind are we using? We're using much, much more. I think this is all right. This is all a wonderful world that you're describing. But when you're actually making taxpayers pay for it, they're saying no, thank you. But when the actual reality hits them, they're saying no. This is not me saying I'm anti what you're saying, but this is the reality.
Well, that's where we need good leadership and savvy economic management. That's what we have a chancellor for, to make these forward-thinking, progressive tax strategies that work for hard-working people who are really feeling the crunch. The cost of living crisis is very, very real, and that they're not just defaulting to these blunt taxation tools that cost poor working families or poorer members of our society as much as it costs the rich. What we need are things that are progressive, where the wealthy who can afford to pay a little bit extra into the pot are helping those who are genuinely making choices about whether they turn the lights on or whether they heat their soup.
But what does that look like then? When you say we need these progressive policies where the wealthy pay more, what does that look like?
So that might be something like tax base rolled into an income tax, so that you pay more if you earn more.
But
whereas
you already do that.
contributions- Yes, but the green levies aren't in the income tax burden. They're in a domestic fuel burden, which everybody pays for because everyone needs to heat their homes and turn the lights on and cook their dinner.
So you're making a good case against the green tax then?
Well, we still need to have it. We just need to shift it. We can't just go, oh, we can't afford to do things that are good for our climate, good for nature, good for society.
Until we've got the renewable energy on tap that can displace the other sources, it's just nonsensical to think that we could turn it off. Otherwise, we will be shivering in the dark.
But why not use this as a catalyst to invest more rapidly, to accelerate that progress in heat pumps, in insulating our homes?
Have you actually looked into heat pumps? I've looked into heat pumps. They are a nightmare. They are a complete nightmare. And they're a particular nightmare for our country because we have such a big stock of old houses.
Absolutely.
And you look into every aspect of it. First of all, they're hugely expensive. Secondly, they only kind of work if you're very well insulated.
Yeah.
Now, I'm both lucky and not lucky in that I do live in an old house. It is impossible to insulate for a number of reasons. I mean, yes, heat pumps, it all sounds great. Well, but when you actually look at the reality of it and look at what's happening today, the moment we are all saying, OK, we're going to raise the cost of energy, so you have to use less, Labour and Conservative MPs are joining up to say, we can't do this. Boris Johnson is saying, if I do this, never mind Partygate, if I do this, we'll have cost of living gate in the spring elections, and he is terrified that he's going to do badly in the spring elections because of this cost of living.
So I'm not saying we should or the government should do nothing. I'm saying they should be cleverer, they should be smarter, they should have the political guts to make good and bold decisions, not easy decisions.
But like they have to say to they have to be honest to taxpayers. They have to be honest to everybody and say, this is going to cost a lot of money.
But what would you have them do?
You are going to be poorer for it.
I would have them shift the burden onto those oil and gas companies who are still using dirty fossil fuels that are genuinely affecting our lives in negative ways. I would have regulations where, of course, heat pumps, I don't particularly mean, actually, Harriet, individuals investing in them necessarily, unless you're very wealthy. You're right, they're punitive and they don't work in many British homes. But we've got house builders up and down the country building new housing stock that is not green energy ready. We've got people building whole housing estates where would you actually charge up an electric car? Nowhere. Yeah. We have to think forwards because you can't keep retrofitting technology into things that you built just a moment ago, that you didn't have the foresight or the regulatory frameworks that meant people actually go, oh, hang on a minute, what is the future going to look like? A greener, cleaner future where our children aren't going to die of unnecessary asthma attacks because of the air pollution, where they're not going to have food insecurity because nature is falling apart.
Marianne says that we shouldn't be thinking about what I was just suggesting. For example, I would press pause on these green levies. I think that one of the problems that we've got in this country, we just silo, kind of single vision, focus on these objectives, so net zero, net zero, net zero, without paying attention to all of the other things that are going on around us and bending and flexing the policy to make sure that there's not a whole tranche of unintended consequences. So I actually think, James, that it would be sensible to press pause on these things like the green levies on bills just through the winter, just for a few months, just through the winter, and then pick it up again then. I don't think the world is going to end if that's going to happen. I don't think that the world is going to spontaneously combust and we're all going to die of global warming, but maybe I'm wrong, James.
I don't think it's ever going to be that sudden an event. But I think the difficulty here, so you say, let's punish the polluting companies. we're actually dependent upon those polluting companies. Every time you turn the light switch on, that's an energy production company. Most of that energy is coming from a company that's putting CO2 into the atmosphere. So I think it's wrong to put the cart before the horse. You cannot make the switch until the green energy is there. Otherwise, it's the consumer who suffers, and no government is going to be able to put a policy in place which means that people are paying like a quarter of their income into energy prices. They're already paying a ridiculous amount into housing prices. So I think that, well, I mean, I don't want to put it all on the government, because it's true, we all say, oh, yes, we want COP26, when it's posed in the sense of, you know, what's happening to the globe. But it's a lot harder to confront those problems when it's what happens in your own house and what happens with your own bills. There are, you know, I don't know if these problems are resolvable, but pause makes sense to me, because we can't do this until we have the energy, the green energy, that would displace the other kinds of energy production.
What was you about to say?
Well, I was actually going to agree with you. I was going to say something completely different, but I was going to agree. I know, don't die down with shock, but because, I mean, for example, I was going to buy an electric car, and I can't buy an electric car because I'm not allowed to charge. I don't have a luxurious driveway, which everyone who seems to have, if they have, you need a driveway if you get an electric car. I live in central London, and you're not allowed to put the cable across the pavement. So, and I can't, there's no kind of charging point. And actually, you know, middle of winter, I don't really want to drive round at, you know, 8 or 9 at night, because now you have to do it off-peak to find a charging point and then walk back on my own. So it's not, you are right that we do need, there could be a lot more done by the government to make it more attractive.
Well, Malcolm's been in touch saying, I've got no issue with the 5% VAT, but what I do have an issue with is the green levy. He says it wasn't part of a manifesto and not something that I ever voted for. You know, I have to say, there's a long debate, not for tonight, but for another day, about whether or not we should have had a referendum. Heaven forbid I suggest a referendum, but a referendum on net zero. We never had one, did we? Stephen has been in touch on the email saying, in response to cutting VAT on fuel bills, who cares about a measly 5% average cut? In my opinion, the big six energy companies should give all of their customers a rebate instead of dishing out billions of pounds in profits to their shareholders. Stephen, be careful what you wish for there, because a lot of pension funds, for example, are shareholders in some of these big organisations, and the rise in share prices and the dividends benefit us when it comes to our pensions. So, I don't know, just putting that out there as a thought. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about your career. Are you happy in the work that you do? Is it what you always imagined that you would do? Was it what your career advisor at school told you should do? Or not? We'll be talking about that after the break.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, is it time we spurned the doomsday modelling of hysterical sage scientists for good? Bob Seeley MP, who has been pushing for an emergency debate on dodgy projections, joins me in the studio. At the BBC, showing they are ashamed of Britain with their reluctance to play God Save the Queen. Andrew Rosendale, the Tory MP who's calling for the return of daily broadcasts of the national anthem, weighs in. And I break down the headlines with my superstar panel, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, the Daily Star columnist Dawn Neeson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. Now, let me ask you to cast your mind back to when you were at school. Did you get careers advice? If you did, was it any good? Did you end up working in the profession that you were asked to consider, or completely opposite? The reason why I ask is because Conservative MP Esther McVey is leading a debate in Westminster this evening on the importance that careers and guides, etc., have on pupils' futures. Let's have a little listen.
How can children know what it is they want to do when they leave school if they aren't told about the career opportunities available to them when they leave school, the qualifications that they will need, and the different educational paths that they can take in order for them to get there?
Marianne, I mean, you've got quite a specific career, haven't you? And when I was looking into you before the show, you went and actually studied that as well. So tell me where your inspiration for that career path came from. Was it always there, or...?
No. Well, I remember having a careers interview at school. I went to a regular state school, and we had one session where you had to fill in a pretty basic computer form. And it came back telling me that I should either consider to be a vet or a gamekeeper, primarily because I liked animals and I liked being outdoors. And then you had a little interview with a careers advisor, and they said, well, maybe you should be a vet. You know, you've got the grades, you'd probably be able to get into university to study veterinary science. I said, well, I don't really like chemistry. And they went, oh, right, OK, well, it's a gamekeeper then, isn't it? I am not a gamekeeper. I've never done that. And I think both that lady and I sort of saw the absurdity of it, that I probably was never going to be trudging around a wood raising pheasants for some rich person to shoot. The way that I got into the work that I do now was a real combination of
I should probably say, sorry if anyone's just tuned in, anthropology, is that right?
It's the study of people, so our kind of biological and evolutionary background, as well as our social and cultural existence as people and as societies. And I studied that at university in conjunction with archaeology. And what I do now is I make TV shows, radio shows, podcasts, I write books. So part of it's as a broadcaster, part of it is as a researcher. But I certainly fell into that, and I consider it sort of part of a portfolio career. I think the thing that's really important for young people now to remember is that that old-fashioned notion of coming out of school, getting a job for life, you work, you pay your dues, you get your gold watch and your pension at the end when you retire. That just isn't a reality anymore. That's a really old-fashioned concept. And I think what we definitely need to do is ensure that children are inspired, that they see the potential in the world and work hard towards that. But what they need to remember, I think, is not that you're necessarily working towards one fixed goal. You're working towards building a set of flexible skills that you can take with you, that you can build, that you can grow with. Because half of the jobs that kids today are going to be doing don't even exist yet. So I can't sit down and tell them, oh, you should be a whatever the 2035 equivalent of a gamekeeper is, because there's going to be jobs that they're doing that don't even exist yet.
Yeah, and James, I've got to be honest, I'm always a little bit suspicious of people whose job it is to tell me what job I should be doing, because I kind of think, what is your experience? What are your qualifications to tell me what I should be doing? So I never really got along, I don't think, with the whole kind of careers advice thing. Did you?
I always felt that it was for people that weren't going to get good jobs. So the people that were going to get good jobs already were connected. You know, either they knew somebody who worked at the local business, or they were going to go on to university. So the careers advisor was really fielding the people who didn't really expect to get anywhere, and that's why it always ended up being supermarket shelf stacker or something like that. So most people's description of careers advice is a big, big disappointment. But our lives have changed so much. You know, when I went to school, people left at 16, and they'd only just raised it from 15. And those boys used to sort of wave their wage packets at us and say, "You mugs stayed on." Whereas now people really come of age at sort of 22. You know, they sort of 40% go to university, don't they?
Harriet, your experience?
Well, my careers advice was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I had this dream of going to Oxford University. I don't know where this dream came from. So my deputy head mistress took great pleasure in telling me that this was a dream, that I was useless, and that no way was I ever going to get there. And this made me so angry and so determined that I did go there. And if she had probably been nice to me and encouraging, I probably would never have worked as hard and never been so...
So she put some fire...
She put fire in me.
In your belly. I remember once I left school, to your point, kind of 15 as well, and I remember going to the job centre, and not being rude if anyone works at the job centre as a, what was the word, like a jobs coach or something like that. Goodness me, my experience there was not all that, it wasn't very productive, shall we say, and I came away from there thinking, good God, if that's kind of who's advising people how to get a job, what hope is there for some people?
Can I say in defence of good careers advice?
You can.
It's about helping you work out what it is that makes you tick, what it is that where your passions lie, and helping you explore the options and the opportunities, and then work out an actual pathway. Because it's all well and good saying, I want to get here, but what is the first step? So good careers advice is absolutely invaluable. Bad careers advice, I mean, we've all got those stories.
Yeah, and you can't be what you don't know as well. I think that's always interesting, because if I had my time all over again, I would have been a trader in the city, mainly because I wanted to earn a load of money, but I didn't even know the city or trading was even a thing. I had a little look at a study that was done just before the pandemic to look at who was happiest in their careers. Apparently landscapers, dog walkers, counsellors and wedding photographers, personal trainers, they were the happiest, and the unhappiest were cleaners, plumbers, accountants, electricians and life coaches. Imagine being a life coach and being unhappy with the work that you're doing. Goodness me, anyway, I'd love to see a survey like that conducted post-pandemic to see how much that has changed, if at all. Anyway, we're almost out of time, which is a real shame, because I had a big news story to talk to you about. Toilet seats and which position they should be in, up or down. But guess what? I think I might save that actually for another day, because there's been a big debate rumbling on about that. I can tell you what is the correct answer. Don't answer it now, because I will actually. I'll save that for another day. But that is all we've got time for. Lots of you actually getting in touch as well about careers, saying that what they do is look at what you're good at, i.e. maths, English, etc., and try and guide you. But I think, as Mary-Anne was making the point as well, some of the jobs of the future, they don't even exist right now. So the challenge as to directing people is real, isn't it? Anyway, that's all we've got time for. Harriet Sargent, Mary-Anne Hotter and James Hartfield, thank you very much for your company, and thank you as well at home for yours. You can keep the contact coming in, and if there's anything you want us to discuss here at Dewbs & Co, do get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at Michelle Dewbs to let me know. Anyway, for now, have yourself a very good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow, 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock.
Hello again. Clearing skies across much of England and Wales overnight will lead to frost and fog, especially in the south. Cloudier and breezier in the north. so frost-free here, but some rain in the far north because of these weather fronts, and also tightly packed isobars across much of Scotland will lead to a breezy night on the periphery of this high pressure. But the high is pushing these weather fronts out of the way. Those weather fronts have brought a generally dull and damp day across southern parts of England and Wales through the day, but they clear by midnight, and then clearing skies across a large